Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Danny Le. I am a librarian here at the Santa Clara City Library, and I am so happy to be speaking with Traci kato-kiriyama about her new book, Navigating Without Instruments, a poetry micro-essay notes to self collection. Fabulous, beautiful, heartbreaking, and joyful and hopeful all at once. I can't wait for everybody to pick it up. Came out last week. You can get it where fine books are sold or at your local library. I ordered some copies, so place those holds. Otherwise, I'd like to read a short bio of Traci's before we start. Traci kato-kiriyama, pronouns they, she, based in unceded Tongva land in South Bay of Los Angeles, is an award-winning multi, inter, and transdisciplinary artist, recognized for their work as a writer, performer, theater deviser, cultural producer, and community organizer. As a storyteller and artivist, Traci is grounded in collaborative process, collective self-determination, and art community as intrinsically tied and a critical means towards connection and healing. She is a performer and principal writer for PULLproject Ensemble, two-time NET recipient, NEFA 2021-22 finalist for their show Tales of Clamor. Traci presented for over 25 years in hundreds of venues throughout North America as a writer, actor, poet, speaker, guest lecturer, facilitator, artist in residence, and organizing arts and cultural consultant. And she has come to appreciate a widely hybrid career with many collaborators across the nation. Their work is also featured in a wide swathe of media and print publications, including NPR and PBS, Entropy, Chapparal Canyon Press, Chucha Press, Bamboo Ridge Press, Heyday Books, and Regent Press. Traci is a core artist in Vigilant Love, member of the HR 40 Coalition, and organizer with the Nikkei Progressives and NCRR Joint Reparations Committee, and the director and co-founder of the infamous Tuesday Night Project. Without further ado, let's welcome Traci kato-kiriyama. I said short bio, but that was the short bio, so it's all good. You got to get all the respect you need. Let's just jump it off. How have you been, in this time? I know it's been, a moment of celebration with this book, but also, the last few years has, done a number on our community and our society. But how have you, navigated through the years, and especially in LA?
Yeah, well, hi, Danny, and to the folks joining. It's a great honor to be with you. I've been so excited for this moment, and yeah, the book released last Wednesday. It's been really wild. It's been really overwhelming in a great way. I'm having a blast. Uh, I'm not used to posting as much as I have been on social media, but I'm just
I've
really trying
noticed.
to be really responsible and, like, you know what I mean, show my gratitude and just keep up. And it's been really awesome. The past couple of years leading to this moment, I think, combined with the several years of working on this project, I had heard, of course, throughout 2020, that people were, um, having a lot of time to do things. And
Yeah.
and I think it'd be kind of oversimplified for me to say that, it allowed me to finish my book finally. That's really not that truthful. I mean, my 2020 actually was, I would say, busier than ever.
Mm.
In
I,
organizing work, right? As a
mhm.
community organizer, like, nothing got easier. So um I think a lot of us realized how much more study we needed to do, and more engagement in different areas of our solidarity work, to deepen areas and then to expand with others. Um, and so I think for me, in being able to, like, finish this, it was more like I was looking at, 7, 8 years of working on this project. And I was like, okay, I refuse to go into 2021 without turning in the final manuscript to my publisher. sans acknowledgements. I gave myself that. I was like, I'll work on acknowledgements in 2021. But everything else, like I was like, it has to be, you know, in the order it's supposed to be in. You know, no one's gonna magically appear and do that for me. And I got to do it. It was more like in my brain, I was like, I can't possibly go past 2020. And so I don't know. It was like a very taxing year because, you know, I think along with everybody, right? Just trying to figure out all of life, all of how we do community work, all of how we make space for um, our staff, right? Our volunteers of our projects, how we amp up in certain areas, how we sort of let loose and let go in others. So gosh, it was such a juggle. It was such a stress and strain, and it was wild, you know. I didn't, you know, I wish I learned how to bake bread and stuff. You know what I mean? I didn't do that.
No,
I
no
did.
sourdough, no, none of
No,
that.
I didn't. And I was just, but I loved watching people do it. You know, I loved eating people's bread. I did learn how to ride a bike.
I'm
I
not gonna
had,
laugh at that because I'll be honest. Only a few years ago, I've learned how to ride a bike. It sounds funny to people, but I'm like, you know what? Because you sometimes can go through life never needing to ride a bike, you know. So
yeah.
it was a moment in time. You're like, why not? I need to get home. No Uber or Lyft coming to get me, and they got all these bikes around, and they're cheaper. So I mean, there's a few crashes, but it happens, you know. But I learned to ride a bike as well. So, hey, I'm with you.
Yeah, right. It's really amazing and liberating, and that was at the very beginning of the onset of the lockdowns.
Mm.
And my partner Joyce, she was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna be home. I'm used to working from home, but she was like, okay, I guess we're gonna just do other things. So let's get you a bike, you know? And so I was like, okay, all right, I just gotta do this. And so that was really amazing. That was really like, you know, it took me a week, and like I just kept watching videos, and then I just kept having to try my own method. But it's so wild because all of a sudden you're riding a bike. It's like, what? This thing that I've been thinking about my whole life, like, you know what I mean? Like I overthought it. And I was a kid. My mom was like, oh, you know, she put me on a 10 speed. I was a child. I couldn't reach the ground with my feet. It was so scary. And then she was like, oh, forget it. You don't have to learn how to ride a bike. I don't know how to learn how to ride a bike. And I think that was my mom, you know, just like modeling my life after hers. So I just never did. So it was really something to finally do that. But yeah.
I think it means a lot to hear that anecdote and a bit of what you learned during this year. Especially, it leads up to, the title of your book, "Navigating Without Instruments." It speaks a lot to, the contents. And I finished this book this week, and um, what you shared in this collection, and unlike other poetry collections I've mentioned to you, it reads almost like a cohesive narrative of your life, in a generational history of your family, from your grandfather, your parents, yourself living through LA, through organizing, through finding yourself and being accepted for that. Um, and it loops back to, uh, you know, people and death. There's a lot of death in here, that's been spoken about. So can you talk about, navigating without instruments? What was because this is not your first book. So what was the impetus to write this and have the stories that you included, as well as the many notes to self, notes to the community, because it's also a self-help book to me as a community organizer myself, to be okay with not being okay. And that was really reassuring through this book. So maybe talk a little bit about your book. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll actually start with this. So, um, I'd been tripping around for a good 3 years with my first book. It was done by a group called The Undeniables. They were a super duper small publishing group that, they folded like a couple years after publishing my book. But I managed to get out with it quite a bit. And I was in 2012 on a tour in LA with Ed Lin, who
Yeah.
came out here from New York, and Chiwan Choi, this scruffy, sort of like kind of like sly, curmudgeonly sort of, but really cool dude. He was reading as well. And so we were just reading at all these different events. And by the end of the week, he was like, "Hey, what's your next project? I want to publish it." I was like, "Oh, okay, he's a publisher too. Okay, cool." But going through the first process with friends of mine, but we had it was a hard process. So I was really kind of freaked out about like going into another one. So I was like, I took my time. I was like, "Oh, let's talk eventually." So we talked somewhere that year, and then I was like, "Okay, cool, 2013, I'll start to really think about it." And in that time, I had visited a military museum in San Diego because a friend was showing his film. And I saw in the case this like survival guide that was issued by the United States Army and Air Forces. And then I started to like look for these guides wherever I could find them and order them and collect them. I just became very obsessed by them. And so I found this one. And this one has like literally you open it and it starts right in. There's no copyright. It just says Office of Flying Safety and Safety Education Division, United States Army Air Force. And I ran into these signals, these panels.
There they are.
And these are sort of, yeah, right. You notice these, and these were amazing, to me. They're basically these panels where theoretically you would have like a blue and yellow and like striped piece of paper, and you would fold it in different ways. So it's sort of like origami. And it would mean, depending on the fold, need first aid supplies. Should we wait for rescue plane? Need quinine or atabrine, need food and water, and I was just like, what are these fascinating things? And something right then and there, I think that's when I knew I wanted to do something that would explore whatever was going on in kind of my life and with my family, and exploring things about like health and wellness and emotional stability and emotional strain, things like depression, and just things that were on my mind a lot and that I was going through with some family. And so, that's when I thought, okay, let's structure something where I could incorporate these panels and sort of these like notes to self. And as I was going into it, I was like, oh, okay, well, there are certain things that are honestly to me, but there are certain things that I want to make like a note to community, note to world, note to other, note to queer fam, or, whatever it was. So, so the structure kind of sort of started to seep in pretty early. The concept did. And then those icons, all 12 of them. Oh, excuse the horn honking from my
it's all good.
Yeah, well, that's my block. All right, so so all of those appear throughout the book, and they separate all the sections of the book. I was gonna just have 9 sections in the book, and when I was putting things sort of like categorizing them, I ended up with 12 different piles, which was exactly the number of the total amount of panel signals in this.
Well.
Okay, all right, let's see if we can work this out. So we're just juggling them around, my partner helped me a little bit, and I was like, no, that's 2 on the nose. And, like, just like moving them around. And then somehow it's just like, no, this makes sense here. This makes sense here. Okay. And so that was me at like, the last week of December of 2020. So there's all that time in between, right? That I had a lot of times where I wasn't working on it at all. It was a lot of off and on, a lot of off, off, off. And there were, many different reasons for that. Part of it was, it was an indie publishing company. They didn't give me like some big advance,
Yeah.
and so, and I love my work. So I would just keep working and doing all these other things, other projects. But also because this is such a personal piece, um, and I knew that if I was going to work on another book, because I do a lot of different, I practice many different forms of art, right?
Mhm.
So I knew if I'm going to do a book, I'm going to like do it, like I'm going to pour myself in. So there ended up being like a lot of psychological blocks as well in the process. And so that led to me kind of running away from it a lot. Yeah.
I think I'm glad you said that because it's one of the things I want to bring up as my writer myself. But how hard it has always been me for myself to go over that hurdle of being honest when you pour. I've written personal pieces, but if you really want to write about what's hindering you or hurting you, sometimes you got to be honest. And in this book, you did pour a lot of your life into here. That some of it dark, some of it unsettling, or hasn't been spoken, and or healed. But there is a lot of healing as well. Don't get me wrong, but that's what made it so compelling and beautiful because you decided to get out of your comfort or fear and share. And you did it in a very beautiful way, especially with the different forms and the way the symbols do break up the chapters, if you will. That's why it's like this is unlike any poetry collection I've read, in the way where I came out not confused about the word. I said no, I think I know Tracy now. It's I can gush all day, and I know. Sorry, people seeing me gush over there. I see you, Darren. What's up? Long time no see. But now, as you came to the completion of this book, you know, did you find yourself um, fearing how it would be? How it would probably be distributed to the world? Because I'm not sure if you thought an indie publisher could get it out to every place you could get it out to.
Mm.
Yeah, the business of it.
Woof. Oh, the business of it is a whole other thing, right? So I think there are two layers to that really good question. Like personally, right? I'm still like every time I see my mom, like talking a little bit more about the book, And I told her about certain pieces that I felt like I
Mhm.
absolutely had to keep in. Um, she's really great. She's just going with it, you know what I mean? And she's more concerned about the book sales.
Right.
She's more like, well, give me the information so I can put it in my newsletter. And um, so I've yet to like sit down with her and read out loud one of the things that I really want to. But I've talked about it with her, and then she's familiar with quite a few of the other pieces when it comes to the ones about family or her directly.
Like,
And so there was that. And then yeah, the indie process, like writ large press and the accomplices. So the accomplices is like this sort of like conglomerate of all of these different independent publishers, and they're all writers and artists and academics and just brilliant people in different parts of the country. And so I think one of their biggest gifts to me was just being so patient. I took so long on this that I did think that at a certain point I was like, are they gonna like drop me? Because you know what I mean? They had to constantly like kind of have it on the back of their minds, like, oh, is it happening this year? Like, what, you know what I mean? And they were so trusting and so patient. And when I got diagnosed with cancer in 2016, Chiwan just was like, your life matters more. The book will come out when it comes out, even if it doesn't have to, you know what I mean? And then that kind of like, I was like, what do you mean? It has to
don't,
come out.
don't
And
say that.
yeah, I was like, oh, and and, you know, they did this beautiful design, and they, you know, they've really just taken care throughout. And then at the same time, it's an independent group. So in terms of the touring, the booking, and, you know, the like letting people know, right, that okay, booking now, available now, all that stuff, for sure. It's like me and a team over here in LA, and, you know, just like making my way to get the information out to folks, and, you know, hiring people to help me with graphics, and, you know, help me with research, and, you know, just different things. You've really helped me like understand like the world of librarians and libraries, you know what I mean? And so I know that there are certain things I still need to really like explore more, like podcasts and reviewers. And so all of that is like, I'm still just kind of creeping in, like, you know, I mean, because I've been so out of the loop, in a way, of like who's reviewing what, and
Right.
submission deadlines for this and that. And so I, you know, I'm going to be utilizing December to, after a series of these events, I'm going to really just try to use the rest of the month to dive into those. And then we just go. Once we hit 2022, you know, we just go. So
We're just gonna go. That's it.
yeah.
Gas. That's it. Gas. No brakes.
You know, no, definitely not.
I would like to maybe hear if you can share a piece, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. And, you know, folks out there, this is like, yeah, my first, you know, sort of sit down conversation, and reading at any length with this. So I tell you, I swear to you, I have tried to prepare. I really have, because I think preparation is so important. And yet I sit here and I'm like, what piece would I start with? And I think I should just start with the first one, just to see where we go from there. So the book opens up with a dedication, the table of contents. It has a repetitive phrase, which is warning: a book of poetry is a trigger warning. A book of poetry is a trigger warning. And we have our first symbol. The first symbol says, have abandoned plane, walking in this direction. And it has an arrow pointing this way. So then we come to the first piece. Remember all the children whom were, sorry, let me say that again. Remember all the children whom were never born to me. The little raspy voice one who can name all the presidents. The big haired one with a smile that screams for revolution and popsicles. The squeaky retort and gentle foot one I saw while sitting there at the beach. Every little one I see while sitting anywhere at every awful beach. Versions of a future, a given back in my 20s. All the while I said my window was closing, but I still knew I had time. This was supposed to happen after all or any of them, especially the ones who came to me in my dreams. The curly-haired cutie pie who rounded the corner, off the hallway, to up and fly into my arms. I still catch him sometimes while standing here frozen in my kitchen. Or the goofball who tapped me on the forehead too early in the morning, begging for waffles and presents. I still see them, even after the decorations are taken down. They construct the perfect, imperfect child. Some tiny one I imagined would be both of my body and dropped off at my door at their age of 2, ready to go, ready to walk, ready to use the toilet on their own. My fantasies don't need to struggle. That little one who would frustrate me, send me to fits, challenge me to the point of knowing I was getting mine. The growing one who would be aging alongside me, feels like they should be, would have been here by now. So I thought I would start the book with that piece. I ended up starting there, just because I literally, for a whole year did not know what order to put the pieces in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just felt right for me to start there because it's something that I don't ever get to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that a lot of people I know don't talk about. And I think there are so many assumptions. So I'm in my 40s, and I also went through cancer, as I mentioned, at the age of 42. The a year that, like, I always thought I was going to have a kid when I was 42, because my dad was 42 when I was born, and his mom, my bachan, she was 42 when he was born. So I was like, okay. And then when I got closer to it, I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to birth a book. I'm not going to birth a human being. I'm going to birth a book. And then I got the tumor. And then I was like, oh, geez. Okay, I guess that's what my 42 is, birthing a tumor. And that, because of that particular age and getting cancer at that particular time, I had a very short window in which to consider freezing eggs. Would we freeze my partner's eggs? Would we do sperm bank? Like all these things. And it's just a lot. It's too much for a person when you're having to think about other things like chemo and, surgery and living, right?
Yeah. Living, right?
Yeah, right. So it was just, and there's so many assumptions that people have about people who have children, about people who don't have children, and that was just simply my little experience. And so I was like, well, let me just start there. Let me just start with this relationship that I imagine, and that I've imagined, and that I have dreamt about, I have fantasized about, I've also let go of.
It was a great first piece.
So let's just start with that.
Yeah, because it really framed, and not saying I'm comparing my life to, but I don't have children. I'm in my 40s. I also see that I've dreamed of would-be children, their smile, what they would call me, what they would call my parents. That kind of love that you wish you could have, had or could project or see. But they're there sometimes in dreams, and it was a wonderful thing that you shared in that, because I know there's corresponding poems that cut a little deeper due to that same topic of children, and those stung me to know that you felt that coming from people you love. It was funny because there was another correlating poem to another family member who, it was a timing of saying things, like sometimes the males in your family say the wrong things at the wrong time. Then you had a corresponding poem that, man, the females in the family know how to say the right things at the right time. And it happened later in your book that made me smile and laugh, because there's the correlation, there's a response to that kind of painful situation. But I know you talked about what you project your identity, how hard it is in the community. One of my favorite pieces is that you describe building community. I think in Past Nights in J-Town in the 90s. And as somebody who lives in San Jose's Japantown, I have a deep love for Japantown arts communities. Grassroots building, not knowing what that looks like, but trying to create some. Can you talk about your life working with your community and building not just Tuesday night cafe, but everything else? How have you seen it grow as you are? Because I remember seeing photos of you. You had purple hair, and like I was like, oh, she's part of this group 03. I was like docking. I was like, man, I was a young poet just wanting to, be down. I was like, yo, I want to know them. I want to know Tracy. So can you talk about, your work in the community?
Yeah. So So I'm a part of this thing called Tuesday Night Project, and we started in 1998. There was a new facility. It was the old Union Church in Little Tokyo, and Little Tokyo Service Center uh, combined with Visual Communications, which is an Asian American media organization, and they put on the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival every year, and East West Players, Asian American Theater Company. Um, and they sort of joined forces to raise money to transform the old Union Church, which had been abandoned, into an art center, into the Union Center for the Arts. At the time, I was working at the Japanese American National Museum, like kind of on the same block, which we call First Street North, but it was like across the parking lot. And I'd heard so many things about Union Center for the Arts. And at the time I was working this was pre-03, and I was in a theater company called Here and Now, and we were touring a lot, and I was doing public programs at the museum, and we were working with a band called Visiting Violet. We were just, meeting lots of different artists, working, collaborating. In theater, you collaborate a lot, right? And so there was a lot of conversation about, oh, we all need a space. We all kind of like need a space. And then as a young artist organizer, I was going to all of these events in South Central, in Boyle Heights, in East LA, in Highland Park. And like all of these like Black and brown folks, multi-generational, multidisciplinary events were happening. Folks in between like a punk band and a spoken word artist, like an elder would come out and talk about, like trafficking issues or like, military base issues. And it was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? And so one of my friends I was organizing with in action, he'd always be like, what's the Asian American scene? What's the Asian American scene? And so we talk about that a lot. So all these conversations, right? And a bunch of us had worked on this thing called Art Attack. And we did it at Search to Involve Filipino Americans down the street in what's now historic Filipino town. And so SIPA let us do this event, and we tried it. We're like, okay, yeah, let's be multidisciplinary too, and same thing, right? So we had the rock band, we had poets, spoken word artists, maybe some dance. My friend John Eric Concordia did this monologue about growing up in Echo Park, and all his friends were like on the floor, and they were just rolling, and he was like this amazing storyteller. I was like, who is this kid? He was like 18 years old. And I call him a kid, but I think I was like probably like 23 or whatever. And so there was just like all this talk about like, okay, how can we do that more often? Because we did it, but then it was like a whole other year before we did the second one. Because we were young and we didn't know what we're doing, and we got burnt out, and we just put all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, how can we do something that's sustainable? That if we're talking about building a scene, building a community, and building a space with multiple people, how could we do something where more people are involved so that each person takes a smaller task? And in that, it becomes hopefully more sustainable. And I didn't use the word sustainable back then, but like more, it would be more solid, it would last longer, right? We could do it more consistently. So that was the experiment. It was just like, let's just try this. And then I got the nod from Little Tokyo Service Center, from Evelyn Yoshimura and Bill Watanabe. They were just like, at the time, Little Tokyo was like dead and no one was hanging out. And, there was always this concern that it was going to be like another Japantown that would like not make it, right? I don't think that was the case, really. I think it was going to pull through, but there was this span of time where people were just like, oh, we need to try some things. So they were like, hey, we need young Asian American and LA people to want to come to Little Tokyo. So go for it. You can use that courtyard in front of the building at the Union Center for the Arts. Go ahead and use that courtyard. So we tried it, and a lot of times I'm not good with titles, so it was getting closer and closer to the event. People are like, what are we gonna call it? I was like, I don't know, it's gonna happen on a Tuesday night, so Tuesday night and there's a cafe. So Tuesday night at the cafe. And then it became Tuesday Night Cafe. And yeah, so it's first and third Tuesdays, you know, multidisciplinary, free to the public, no green room, no backstage, everyone's accessible to each other. And it's grown a lot. And I curated that for 15 years. I stayed on as director for Tuesday Night Project, which presents TNC. Sean Miura came on to become the curator, lead producer, kicking butt. And then just like we've been building a team, and a whole new team, really, pretty much over the past handful of years. And they're all, wow, so amazing. So we just really laid low during the pandemic and did just online programming in other areas, like smaller projects that I wanted to nurture. We do a tea and letter writing series online. We want to bring that back to the in-person space eventually with like the tea service and, you know, the way we started it. And we have a workshop series that highlights our staff. So it's a really good thing. And now we're like, okay, maybe April 2022, we're going to start to reimagine how we can kind of come back and do it safely.
I will. Yeah, I'll make sure I come down for that once it happens. I'm there. Definitely.
Please do. Yeah, I invite everybody to come. So I did want to make sure that like I put stuff in here that, you know, I do a piece kind of in homage to the idea of art plus community. That's a one word, art plus community. And, you know, to like my heroes in Little Tokyo. Yeah, so there's a lot of LA and, you know, Little Tokyo love in this for sure.
It's, you know, and I'm grateful because it's not often I'm not, you know, looking at the right places, but it's hard for me to find new Japanese American voices in literature to speak on, you know, their experiences, because I want to hear from you because of, you know, being that we're certainly situated in the last remaining historic Japan towns. The changes that are going on in Japanese community, but also you know, these cultural centers that we're seeing where, you know, legacy families, you know, families who've been here for generations, the children are not taking over the businesses. There's a lot of development, you know, gentrification, and also a lot of talk of investing in the arts and culture realm, but lack of action. You know, a lot of talk, you know, but, you know, we don't see the money, or, you know, you're building that condo, but where's the art space that you promised? You know, it's scary and sad, but I want to hear from you. What do you see, you know, where you're at? You see a good fight happening to continue to solidify a space as you create space, you know, how they could create space for us.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, that's a big one. I do want to say, like, I think that they're definitely, you know, like when you talked about like other JA writers, I was thinking instantly about Amy Uematsu has this, what I consider like a classic. I think it was written in the 80s, I want to say, 30 Miles from J-Town. I'll send you a copy. To me, that's kind of like a classic, and she's an awesome writer. And I do crave these stories about like little Tokyos and Japantowns for sure. And it's a hard one because right now I think I kind of feel like Little Tokyo's been sort of smashed around the past 2 years because of the pandemic, you know, lots of closures, and then people opening new businesses without the benefit of all of our community organizers, community organizations, having staff there and present physically. And so they're not running into them. Not like they would always notice them, but I think that there's something going on where you have people coming in and you don't have the folks from Little Tokyo Service Center, JCCC, Janum, visual communications, like, you know, like they're every day physically walking around, kind of like being a part of the conversation of this new business. and how they're participating in community. So it gets dwindled down to very few people who have this like huge responsibility to be like, hey, new neighbor, what do you know about Little Tokyo? And let me have this conversation with you, you know? So, you know, our friend Kristen Fukushima, who is the managing director of what's called the Little Tokyo Community Council, it's like has a very, very tough job because, you know, is like sort of struggling with everyone's struggles, from the businesses to the cultural anchorships, to, yeah, just like the constant new business. And it's rough. I think that there's something that's coming to a head there. And you know, there is, I think, this really great effort that's happening to support the unhoused in Little Tokyo. It's a project called the Power Ups, and there are Power Ups in other places, but this Power Up happens in what's called Toriyumi Plaza in Little Tokyo. It happens every Saturday, and they've done it for like well over 40 weeks. And so it's a group called J-Town Action and Solidarity, and they're trying to really, I think with the Power Ups, really focus on like direct support. And then that ruffles up other feathers, and like, you know, there's a lot of like non-communication, like weird communication, like, you know, it's just like the whole spectrum. You see the whole spectrum, right? And so it's just it's a rough time for how people are trying to figure things out, and how people are communicating with each other, you know what I'm saying? So it's going to be, I think, just a continue to be a rough road ahead. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
have hope
yeah.
always, but it's hard.
Not to sound like it's doom and gloom. I know it's just going to be rough, but I think what from the way you explained it, there's a lot of good happening, you know, on the grassroots level. So, and I see it out here too. It's tough because we're not seeing the humanity publicized on the newspapers and on TV. A lot of it's, smash and grabs and here and there, it's just the negativity, which leads to more miscommunication and finger blaming. And I hate that because it never gives anybody a chance to explain themselves or what's happening.
Yeah.
It's just more anger, which, alienates others. But
yeah,
I mean, we're doing it, right? Doing the good work. It'll be fine, as long as we continue.
Yeah.
I know we just veered off discussing other things, but
Yeah, but maybe I could why don't I read The Invisible Capes of Little Tokyo, since we're on this topic,
sure.
sort of as an homage piece. So yeah, the Invisible Capes of Little Tokyo. You've seen them, but you may be distracted by the obvious. The kids in cosplay. Attire in homage to beloved characters of the manga world. They come to Little Tokyo to feel free to be their inner anime spirit. Some in homespun costume with cardboard staff and older sibling graduation gown. Others heed to $400 corset with tulle petticoat and platform Mary Janes. I watch the tourists request photos with the best dressed. It is not Halloween. This is any day of the week. No anime convention necessary. The intersection is complex, a safe haven for the misfits of other parts of the city, and a year-round, open-season Japanophile fantasyland. But the richest scene comes when I stop and consider the less scene, my main attraction, the J-Town OGs, the Little Tokyo superheroes, the ordinary extraordinary, who carry my history in their pockets and memories of when their attendance was undeterred by the dismal numbers roaming about past 6 p.m. I swear I see it all the time. The ghosts of J-Town past high-fiving the Little Tokyo pros of the present. The ones with shooting stars in the shape of 2 tennis balls guiding the front of a walker. The Nisei volunteers walking back to the museum with seed packets from Onsen Hardware and pride more complicated than war. The 70-something community organizer with a stack of meetings on her shoulders, the weight of battle at her ankles, and "I don't give a" written all over her face. The Youngbloods, building pipelines along 2nd Street, entry points unjudged on ISO, bridges this side of the towers, for the next generation of youth, and the next, and the next. Around their necks, they wear invisible capes the size of parachutes, armed with staff and sword in the form of plastic file carriers from Daiso, and treasure maps of the 4x6 cardstock kind, donning satchels of bokashi compost, an elixir of sake or espresso, walking the cultural spine through pumpkin patches, hanging with the wolves, cranes, and kings who share their loot with the whole lot. The next time you're in Little Tokyo, walk down First Street, turn your head, look up, an invisible cape. Another one just passed you by.
Woo!
That's for the heroes that people don't see.
I can see that. Everyday heroes. Like, keep slapping me in the face invisibly, but they're there. Anyway, if you have questions, you want to ask Tracy anything, you can go put it in the Q&A. I know you're just listening, but if you have anything, just go ahead and pop it in, and I'll ask Tracy. But while I'm waiting for you to type your questions, with this collection, what did you hope? Because I know what I felt when I read it. What do you hope your readers get from your book as they go from page to page till the end?
I know my answer to this question will change over time too. I think about this paraphrased quote that my friend told me he heard from playwright Philip Kongotanda. Essentially, the statement was, write what it is you need to say or you will die if you don't. Write what it is that you need to say or you will die if you don't. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I was putting in this, it was like, for that moment in time, for that period of time, I would check in with that question, like, okay, does this go in with this collection? Am I saying what like I must say? Because you can write about a million things and that's fine. And there are other projects for all those things. But that was kind of one of my bars. It was one of my lines. It was just like, because I had a lot about like food and other things, aging, a lot more, like some more humorous pieces. But when I was putting it together, I was like, it's not fitting really with that kind of intensity for me. And so it makes this book pretty intense, but then that's why that's what kind of allowed me to write about different things, so that it wasn't just going to be about family and history. It wasn't just going to be about cancer and illness. It wasn't just going to be about relationships and queerness. It was going to be about just like me at this time, what I need to say now. Or a little part of me will like implode if I don't. A little part of me will know I didn't. I wasn't impeccable to my word. I wasn't impeccable to my intention if I don't. So that was kind of the parameter for me, or the grounding.
Very, very good parameter and grounding. I'm gonna take that as well for myself.
Absolutely.
Mark asked the question, could you talk about why your name is in lowercase?
Yeah, sure. If you're familiar with the pen name of Bell Hooks, I was really, I still am, I'm very inspired by Bell Hooks. And in my 20s, I read Bell Hooks a lot. And I loved that she had her name in lowercase. And so I just started to experiment with that way back when. And I was just like, it was interesting because to not capitalize my name felt like it was a sort of like a daily exercise in attempting humility.
Mm.
attempting a check-in with my ego. And then it just became very, I don't know, a part of my like, I don't know, my way of understanding my name. So, and I've done it for so long now that it's just like, yeah, that's how my name is spelled, you know? Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. Looks like Yotika is asking, who are you reading that inspires and influence you now?
Oh gosh, I was telling Danny before the call that, I really wanted to do this in my studio because Danny, you literally have my favorite actual background on Zoom. I just love it so much. It's so inspiring. So I was like, oh, I should do it in my studio so you can be near my books and my altar that I created last week. And so I recently created this altar of wild thinking and gratitude. And so the first thing I thought to do was put books on it. And I have these big stacks of books, and my task, and I can't wait, in this month, I'm going to just like carve out time every day to just dive in. So there are so many I would like, oh my goodness. Boy, oh boy. I mean, okay. So when I think about inspiration, yes, of course, I think about writers. And so I'll say this right now for sure. Women Who Submit, they just came out with an anthology, and I cannot wait to read that. Brilliant, brilliant folks. They started a decade ago in LA, but now they have chapters all over the country. And they really support non-binary and women writers to submit to top tier journals, because the statistics are wild, but the majority of, as you know,
Yeah.
what's published in journals are dudes,
Yeah.
and many times not people of color. And so they help folks to understand the process. And then they used to do these parties in person where every time someone would like submit to a journal, they'd be like, submit, and then they'd all like, toast or like be like, whoa. So they're really great. And they just came out with an anthology called Gathering. And I know many of those writers. I've read many of those writers, so I can't wait to read this new piece. This one right here, Naomi Hidehata, I can't wait to get into this. Clark and Division, Mystery, Harrowing by Kate Maruyama. Chiwon Choi, my editor, oh God, big inspiration for me in terms of his poetry, and every single author that they publish. Woo! Icon, F. Douglas Brown, I must say that out loud. You're interested in LA, Letters to My City, Mike Songson. Woo! Rocio Carlos, oh my goodness, The Other House. I could go on and on. But let me also say though, it's not just writers, right? Like I'm also thinking of music, and I'm a theater artist, so theater, right? Visual art. I just saw a beautiful exhibition here at the Armory in Pasadena of Allison Saar's work. Wow. Incredible sculpture work. So, the inspiration is all around. It's in my home. It's in my cats. My partner's an influence. My mom, right? Like, I attended a funeral online 2 days ago, and the people who passed, the 100 plus billion people who have died, recorded, they all give us energy. That's an influence.
Yeah.
So I'm deeply really committed to work on reparations. So Dreesen Heath, who I get to work with, is if you don't know her, look her up. She's an amazing researcher and advocate. Like I'm always inspired by her. I'm inspired by NCRR. I must say that out loud. They Nikkei for Civil Rights and Redress, they raised me as an adult, in political work and intergenerational work. So I would say, you know what I mean? Influence to me is not just literally about reading other poets. And I could sit here for a day and just name them for sure. And I do think we have so many brilliant folks on the West Coast that get overlooked because we all have a New York complex when it comes to that in the publishing industries. So I do love our West Coast writers. I love our LA writers down here. And but yeah, it really does. Like, you know, there's so many influences, right? So many, so many.
So many. But I think you gave us a good short list of what to expect if we were going to put some holds on those books, as well as what we should be looking for. But I think we know that you're highly inspired all the time through life and through your community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I hate to stop our talk, but we're nearing the end. But
No, it goes so fast.
I know.
Thanks, folks, for staying on and asking questions. It's been awesome.
Can you share with? I know that you'll be, touring the book more, but any other projects or things that you want to shout out that we should be aware of?
For sure. If you're in LA, January 29, we're going to have a little Tokyo community launch for Navigating Without Instruments.
Woo!
And then I'm going to come up to the Bay in March. So look out for that. In terms of like another major project that I'm going to be concentrating a lot on next year as well, you mentioned it when you read the bio, Tales of Clamor. So that's a play that we got to do its first iteration of a public performance in 2019. And then we just won the New England Foundation for the Arts Creation and Touring Grant. Oh, we're so excited. What that does is it allows us to develop the play further, and then it allows us to tour it eventually. So San Jose is actually one of the main places that we want to bring it to.
We're here to help that along.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's NCRR, who I mentioned. They were our principal creative collaborator. My stage partner Kennedy Capasares, who's from the Bay. He's from San Francisco originally. He's a circus artist, an aerial artist. So we incorporate circus elements, both literally and metaphorically, to tell the story. And it goes back and forth between present and past, analyzing cultural and institutionalized silence and collective breaking of silence. And we anchor it in the journey towards the commission hearings in 1981 that led to redress for Japanese Americans. But the 1981 moment is critical, and most people don't know about it, but it was televised, it was on the news, and it was like a very emotional, angry, articulate group of people breaking their silence about their experiences being incarcerated in mass during World War II. And it really fights the tropes of what I think we're taught about our own people, being quiet and not speaking up ever. So I love this project.
Yeah, don't worry, you're not definitely quiet, and so am I. So tropes and stereotypes broken. Traci, I could talk with you for a million hours and years and build so much good projects in the future. I know this is just our virtual end, but when we see you in San Jose, I'll be publicizing, collaborating with you. And I hope everybody out there, please come out and support their good work that Traci's doing, as well as, buy the book. If you haven't bought this book, please pick it up, borrow at the library, do what you got to do. Read this, feel the love in this book. And we just hope to be able to thank you in person, in real flesh and blood, so.
Thanks so much, folks. If you want to stay in touch, I am on Facebook. I'm on Instagram a little bit more. I'll write my handle there. I'm trying, I'm doing it. I'm trying to do it. So, yeah, but, stay in touch with Danny right in Santa Clara Library, because I'm sure you'll let people know when I'm up there with you.
Oh yeah, I'll just be tagging along and tagging your name. So
thank you so much. This was awesome.
All right, everybody, please be well, be safe, be warm, but we're grateful for this opportunity. And if you're watching this later, please support the library, support Traci, and we'll see you next time. One love. Peace.